Namaste and good morning, everyone. Let's do some prayers. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. Om Bhur Tat Savitra Varenayam, Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi, Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat, Asto Ma Sadgamya, Tamso Ma Jyotirgamya, Mrityurma Amritam Gamya. ओम सहनावतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सवीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति 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 ओम. Let's go to our Uddhava Gita books. Page number 721. Let's look at verse number 22. And this is the last chapter, chapter 23. And the title of this chapter is Bhakti Yoga. So in this verse number 22, Lord Krishna is saying, Eshaha buddhi matam buddhir manisha cha manishi nam yat satyam anritnehe mrityehe na apnoti ma amritam. This process is the supreme intelligence of the intelligent and the cleverness of the cleverest. Because by following it, one can make use of that which is temporary and illusory to achieve me, the eternal reality. Why do people often execute devotional service in the hopes of gaining fame and other personal advantages? The reason is that they are not actually intelligent. This is the purport of this verse. One who poses as a great devotee to enjoy immense prestige is not actually intelligent. Simply to imagine oneself to be a great preacher of devotional service or a great relisher of a transcendental rasa, simply for enjoying fame and reputation, is also not the sign of good intelligence. One who has taken birth in Bharatvarsh should try to attain the eternal Supreme Lord with the help of his temporary material body. One can obtain the eternal with the help of the temporary. Conditioned souls can utilize their abominable material bodies to achieve a sublime eternal form like that of the Supreme Lord. According to the material conception, one who can earn thousands of coins by investing just a few coins is considered intelligent. Especially in this age, those who possess the most wealth are considered to be the cleverest persons in society. However, if one could somehow possess a touchstone or a wish-fulfilling cow, he would certainly be considered even more clever and intelligent. Touchstone is what? The Paras money. So they say Paras money can touch the iron and make it into gold. That's a touchstone. Still, it must be understood that all such possessions are temporary and thus ultimately useless. If those who have been born in Bharatvarsh engage their temporary material bodies, which are composed of disgusting substances prone to dwindle, full of disease, and ultimately destroyed, in the service of the Supreme Lord, they can come to relish the best of all possessions, love of God. The Lord gives his very self to those who are devoted to him without personal motivation. It's even said that भगवान भगत के वश में होते हैं. Okay. How wonderful such an attainment is. How intelligent are the inhabitants of Bharatvarsh who engage in unmotivated devotional service by hearing about the Lord, chanting his glories, and rendering all sorts of service to him. The tongue should always be engaged in chanting the holy name of the Lord. The ears should be continuously engaged in hearing the Lord's glories. And the hand should be employed in rendering menial service to him. Even by fully engaging in only one of the 9 processes of devotional service, one can achieve the perfection of life. Considering this, what actually intelligent and clever person will fail to do so? Those who are the most clever and intelligent will engage themselves in the devotional service of the Lord. It is only due to a good fortune that a conditioned soul who is bewildered on account of material attachment decides to utilize whatever may be in his possession for the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By such dovetailing of one's material body and possessions in the service of the Lord, one comes to the platform of eternality. Let's look at verse number 23. एषा ते अभिहिता कृत्स्नो ब्रह्मवादस्य संग्रह समास व्यास विधिना देवानाम अपि durgama. I have thus described to you, both briefly and in detail, the essence of spiritual knowledge, which is incomprehensible even to the demigods. The Supreme Lord thus concludes his description of the process of transcendental realization. The word Devanam in this verse not only refers to the demigods, but to all those who are situated in the mode of goodness. Goodness was Satvikta. Those who are elevated in this way, but still are not fully surrendered to the Supreme Lord, are to be considered on the level of the demigods. So when we completely surrender, only then we can go beyond Satvikta. Because up to the Satvikta is like our efforts. I have done good. That says, sure, doing good, but I is still there. Verse number 24. Abhikshan shaste gatitam jnanam visapasht yuktimat etat vigyaye muchyet purusho nashta sanshaya. I have repeatedly spoken this knowledge to you within a logical manner. Anyone who properly understands this knowledge will become free from all doubts and attain liberation. Okay, throughout this Uddhava Gita, we have seen that again and again he touched the same principles. So if we don't understand, we should go back and try to understand it in a better way. Verse number 25. Suviviktam tav prashnam mayo tad api dharyet sanatanam brahm guhyam param brahm adi gachati. Anyone who carefully considers these clear answers to your questions will attain the confidential goal of the Vedas, the supreme absolute truth. So goal of the Vedas. So that means goal of our life. Supreme absolute truth. Brahm adhigachati. The Supreme Lord said, I have elaborately replied to your questions. Because we saw that throughout this Uddhava Gita, just like in Bhagavad Gita, Lord kept on answering Arjun's questions. Over here, he kept on answering Uddhav's questions. Anyone who attentively hears these answers will attain the Supreme Brahma, who is the confidential goal of the Vedas. Verse number 26. Ya etanmam bhakteshu sampradhyat supushkalam tasyaham brahmdayasya he dadamye atmanam atmanaha. So this is verse number 26. One who liberally imparts these instructions to my devotees is the bestower of the absolute truth, and to him I give my very self. So Lord Krishna and other yogis also, they keep on encouraging people like us to share it with others. So that's why towards the end of the scriptures, we always see that. Okay. And never considering that it's our knowledge, it's God's knowledge. All we do is just share it with others after understanding it, and not only understanding it, after living this kind of a devotional life too. Although the phrase Brahm Deyas is in the sixth dative case, it should be understood to be in the fourth dative case, so that it indicates one who gives the supreme Brahma to others. So over here he is talking about some rules of Sanskrit language. Devotees of the Supreme Lord are well aware of the science of devotional service when they mercifully distribute that knowledge to others and thus bring them to the service of the Supreme Lord. The Lord reciprocates such magnanimity by giving his very self to such devotees. On the other hand, those who are engrossed in their plans for material enjoyment cannot possibly achieve such mercy of the Lord. Okay. So it's like when we can remember that, no, this is God's work. This is God's Leela. We are just got to play our part in there by remembering that all is his and just share it with others. That's what he keeps on saying that. So Lord reciprocates. Okay. So it's just like in this world, when we do some work for somebody, they pay us for that. So when we do God's work, how much God will pay us? Okay. And there is a saying in Hindi that jag majduri det hai, kyun rakhe Bhagwan. Okay, when we do God's work, God takes care of us. Verse number 27. Ya etat samdhiyet pavitram parmam shuchim sapuyet har mam gyan dipen darshayam. One who loudly recites this supreme knowledge, which is purifying for both the hearer and the chanter, becomes steadily purified as he reveals me to others with the lamp of transcendental knowledge. A beautiful verse. Similar verse we saw in Bhagavad Gita when Lord Krishna said, सुनने वाले को भी, सुनाने वाले को भी, पढ़ने वाले को भी. So he said, those who are expert in the understanding of devotional service to the Lord are able to dissipate the darkness of ignorance with the light of transcendental knowledge. So this avidya, it can be removed only with this knowledge. The conditioned souls are in a contaminated state of existence, but when they take to the Lord's service, they quickly become sanctified. The darkness of ignorance cannot remain in the presence of the Son like Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay. Verse number 28. Ya etach shridhyaya nityam avyagraha shrenuyan nara mai bhaktim param kurvan karmi bhirna sabadhyate. One who regularly hears my instructions with faith and attention while constantly engaging in my pure devotional service will never become bound by the reactions of karma. Okay. So otherwise these karmas, whether they are good karma or not so good karma, they bind us. Good karma bind us too. Okay. So, but over here he is saying that regularly hears my instructions. So hearing is part of it. Shravan. With faith and attention while constantly engaging in my pure devotional service. So whatever we do, we got to do it for God. That is a pure devotional service. Never become bound by the reactions of karmas. That's a karam yogi. It's not just what kind of a karam we are doing, whatever we are doing. We could be walking outside, or we can even just throwing our garbage out into the trash can. That can be a karam yoga too. Any action can turn into a karma yoga, and then there's no reaction of that. Verse number 29. Api uddhav tavya brahma sakhe samvadharitam api te vigatoho moha shokaha cha asho manobhava. My dear Uddhava, have you fully understood these transcendental instructions? Sounds familiar, right? Has your illusion and lamentation now been dispelled from your mind? See, teachers, good teachers, they always ask that. They want to make sure that instructions have been given properly and understood properly. So that's what Lord Krishna is saying. Uddhav's lamentation arose because he thought himself to be separated from Lord Krishna. It is understood that Uddhav is an eternal associate of the Lord who was put into illusion so that this wonderful conversation known as Uddhava Gita could be spoken. Lord Krishna is herein indicating that if Uddhav did not perfectly understand his instructions, he would happily repeat them. Uddhav is an intimate associate of the Lord. And so this question is somewhat playful in nature. After all, the all-knowing Lord could understand Uddhav's perfect understanding of Krishna consciousness. By achieving the Lord's mercy, the living entity's ignorance in the form of the material conception of life is dispelled. In the liberated condition, there is no possibility of becoming subjected to lust or lamentation. Verse number 30. Netat tavyaha dambhikaya nastikaya shataya Ashushrushoре abhaktyay durvinayatay diyatam. You should not instruct this knowledge to anyone who is hypocritical, atheistic, or dishonest, or with anyone who will not listen faithfully, who is not a devotee, or who is simply not humble. So there are prerequisites for this kind of a knowledge. See, just like in our schools, colleges, to take the higher courses, there were some prerequisites, right? If we wanted to go take calculus, we had to know algebra and trigonometry. Only then we could understand calculus. The same way, if we really want to understand this, we got to have some qualifications met. And this is what he's talking about. Anybody who is a hypocrite will not understand why you want to waste your time. Atheistic who doesn't even believe in God, and you are talking about God, they will just waste your time. Dishonest, or anyone who will not listen faithfully, who is not a devotee, or who is simply not humble. Okay, so these are the qualities we got to see. We don't need to judge others, but we got to look at it. Do we have these qualities? So that whatever we have learned, whatever he is telling us to do, if we have the qualities, or if we throw out all these flaws from us, it will be easier for us to walk on this path. No dishonesty, having full faith in God. We got to listen faithfully, carefully. We should not be hypocrite. Okay? Spiritual knowledge should not be distributed to those who have no faith. The confidential knowledge of devotional service to the Supreme Lord should not be presented to non-devotees. Those who are falsely proud, cheaters, those who are arrogant, atheists, those who are faithless, and those who have no interest in hearing the truth. In this context, one should remember the 9th offense against the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. Verse number 31. एतहे दोषेर विहीनाम ब्रह्मण्याम प्रियाम प्रियाय च साध्वे शुच्ये बुरियाद भक्ति स्यान शूद्रा योषिताम. This knowledge should be taught to one who is devoid of those faults, who is dedicated to the welfare of the Brahmins, and who is kindly disposed, saintly, and pure. And if Shudras and women are devoted to the Supreme Lord, they can also be accepted as qualified to receive these instructions. Okay, so it's not a gender, it's not a caste or a class, it's like a devotion. Do we have a devotion in our mind or not? Do we have these qualities or not? If Shudras and women have devotion for the Lord, they should also be instructed about the process of devotional service. The members of all the 4 varnas can be instructed in the confidential understanding of devotional service if they maintain a condition of purity and honesty. Indeed, anyone can give up his duties within the Varnashram society and fully dedicate himself to the devotional service of the Lord. Okay, and we learned in Bhagavad Gita, these kind of verses were there too. And I mentioned it to you, it's not a physical body these saints are talking about. They are talking about the mind. See, when the mind is attached, see, that's why they say Ma ki mamta. So emotionally attached. So we cannot understand this. So in order to understand all this, we got to attach our mind to Lord. So it's not a male body or a female body, it's a mental condition these saints are talking about. Verse number 32. Netat ujay jigyasur gyatavyam avshishyate pītva piyusham amritam patavyam na vishishyate. When a person who thirsts after the truth gains an understanding of this transcendental knowledge, he has reached the completion of his education. When someone drinks nectar, no more thirst will remain. A pure devotee is fully satisfied with his engagement in the devotional service of the Lord. Outside of such engagement, he does not desire to cultivate knowledge. And even if a pure devotee desires some particular understanding, he will receive dictation from the Lord within his heart. One who knows the Supreme Lord is the knower of everything. If one drinks celestial nectar, how can he thirst for something else? So it's like a highest is attained. So there's no more desire for anything else, no more thirst for anything else. Verse number 33. Gyane karmani yoge cha vartyam dandadharane yavan artho nrinam tat tavans te ham chaturvidha. My dear Uddhava, by means of karma, jnana, yoga, mundane business, political rule, and the acceptance of Tridand, people try to make advancement in 4 objectives of life: religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. But because you are my devotee, whatever can be accomplished in these ways, you will very easily find within me. Should a devotee accept the process of karma or jnana if he desires material advancement or liberation? Here the Lord says that he awards the 4 objectives of human life to the devotees that desire them. I am the goal of their cultivation of knowledge. The cultivation of knowledge culminates in liberation. The performance of fruitive activities depends on the principles of religiosity. And yoga awards one mystic perfections. Mystic perfections is talking about those vibhutis which we learn in Yoga Darshan. Okay? Because whether you want them or not, those vibhutis, those powers do come. All such accomplishments can easily be attained by the mercy of the Lord. This is confirmed in the Narayaniya of the Moksha Dharma in Shri Mahabharata. So he is quoting that, a verse from Mahabharata. Whatever among the four goals of human life can be achieved by various spiritual practices is automatically achieved without such endeavors by the person who has taken shelter of Lord Narayan, the refuge of all persons. The purport of this verse is that one should not divert his attention to other process, because one who is devoted to the Supreme Personality can attain all the benefits derived from the practice of yoga, philosophical speculation, the performance of religious rituals and sacrifices, the giving of charity, and so on. That is the specific benediction of devotional service to the Supreme Lord. So this is like I told you that this is a Bhakti Pradhan Granth. So all the emphasis given to the Bhakti. Okay. Because devotees obtain the perfection of yoga by their execution of devotional service, they never consider undergoing various disciplines such as Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, severe austerities, or ritualistic religious performances. Verse number 34. मृत्यो यदा त्यक्त समस्त कर्मः निवेदितात्मः विचिकित्सितो मे तदा मृतवम प्रतिपद्यमानो मय आत्म भूयाय च कल्पते वै. One who gives up all fruitive activities and surrenders unto me, sincerely desiring to render service unto me, achieves liberation from birth and death, and while residing in my supreme abode, shares my opulence. Uddhav might have said, I have heard your opinion on this matter, but what is the opinion of your devotees? The Lord would reply, my dear Uddhav, the opinion of pious persons has been described in the 18th chapter, and the opinion of sinful men has been given in the 22nd chapter. My devotees are truthful, saintly, and undisturbed by material duality. A surrendered soul is one who, by the mercy of my devotee, has given up all varieties of religiosity to engage in my unalloyed service. Such a surrendered devotee has taken shelter at the lotus feet of bona fide spiritual master, who is non-different from me. The spiritual master initiates his disciple into the chanting of Krishna mantras, and disciple offers everything in his possession, including his body, mind, and power of speech, for the service of the Lord. When a devotee sincerely surrenders unto me even once, I personally take charge of him. My activities and the activities of my devotees are transcendental and factual, having nothing to do with Maya, the illusory energy. As a result of his engagement in my service, a devotee comes to associate with me as one of my loving associates. When the conditioned souls renounce fruitive activities and the cultivation of knowledge and surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it's not that they will feel any scarcity. The Supreme Lord is perfect and complete, and everything in relationship with Him is also complete. Or, in other words, without any deficiency. So now from the next verse, we see a couple of verses spoken by Shukdev ji. Okay, you remember that Shukdev ji, because this Uddhava Gita is part of Bhagavad Purana. And Shukdev ji, Vyasa's son, is telling all this to Arjun's grandson, Parikshit. So that's why we see that Shri Shuk Uvaj. Then after that, Uddhava will speak. So we'll start with the verse number 35 next week, and we'll finish this great scripture next Tuesday. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaye Purnameva Visheshyate. Om Shanti 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 Om. Thank you very much.